The word psychopath might evoke images of notorious film characters like Lecter and Patrick Bateman, but in reality, the true psychopath is often even scarier than Hollywood's worst nightmares. Psychopaths are characterized by their lack of empathy, impulsiveness, and a cold, calculating charm. And while they make up just 1% of the population, their ability to blend seamlessly into society while hiding their true nature is what makes them so terrifying. Today, I'll be looking at their disturbing traits, habits, and behaviors to show you just how disturbingly ordinary they can appear. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 terrifying facts about psychopaths. 25. There are unexpected benefits. Now, before I jump into all the murder and gore, let me tell you this. It's not all bad. At least, not for the psychopaths. While the word psychopath usually equates to horror and violence, there's a scary reality that's often overlooked. Being a psychopath comes with unexpected benefits. These men and women are usually great at fitting in because they're usually more attractive, more charming, and have a knack for reading people. And it doesn't stop there. Psychopaths also have a disturbing advantage when it comes to the evolutionary game. I mean, think about it. What do you get when you mix good looks with the will to manipulate? Yeah, someone with excellent chances of reproducing. In other words, it's not just about the survival of the fittest, but actually about the survival of the most terrifying. 24. Psychopaths are dopamine junkies. We've all gotten used to the rush of dopamine, like when we check our phones, for example. For psychopaths, however, this dopamine hit is so intense that it becomes an all-consuming obsession. When detectives asked Ted Bundy why he committed such horrific acts, he just said, "I just like to kill. I wanted to kill." So what was it that drove him to murder time and time again? According to a study by Joshua Buchholz at Vanderbilt University, it all boils down to dopamine, the neurotransmitter that stimulates our reward centers. Psychopaths are dopamine junkies. And to make matters worse, they produce more of it than the rest of us. But here's the cherry on top. They not only produce more dopamine than the rest of us on average, but it spikes when they have the opportunity to control and manipulate others. Can you see the cycle? 23. Psychopaths can switch their empathy on and off. Most of us believe that psychopaths have no empathy. However, a 2012 study by neuroscientists at the University of Groningen revealed a surprising twist in that presumption. Using MRI technology, the researchers observed psychopathic criminals while they watched disturbing movies. The clips showed a hand either gently touching, rejecting, or striking another hand. At first, the psychopaths showed no reaction, but when researchers instructed them to empathize, their responses changed dramatically. They visibly reacted to any scenes of suffering, meaning that they can activate their empathy at will. I mean, think about that for a second. Can you imagine the horror of someone who can decide when to care and when to remain cold and detached? The implications are extremely unsettling and suggest the capacity for new levels of manipulation that have never been considered before. 22. Psychopaths have a lot in common with presidents, and vice versa. In 2012, psychologists from Emory University analyzed the personalities of the US presidents, from Washington to Bush, and discovered that a lot of them exhibited a trait known as fearless dominance, or FD. This trait, characterized by a lack of fear and the ability to charm, is standard when it comes to psychopaths. While none of the presidents fit the psychopathic profile perfectly, the study found that Teddy Roosevelt had the highest FD score. John F. Kennedy and Franklin D. Roosevelt were up there with him, with Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush all making the top 10. Obama wasn't included in the study because he was still in office. According to researcher Scott Lilienfeld, psychopaths and effective leaders are basically twigs off the same branch. 21. The state with the most psychopaths in America is... Can you guess? No, it's actually not New York. And it's not California either. In 2018, researchers set out to identify the most psychopathic spot in the United States, and Connecticut emerged as the winner. Connecticut. However, when the Federal District of Washington, D.C. was included, it scored nearly double that of Connecticut, making it the true epicenter of psychopathy in America. 20. When psychopaths fall in love. For the average psychopath, the partner is usually a tool or a possession. Real affection is rare. and their relationships are often a toxic mess. A 2015 study looked at 140 couples over a year to understand how psychopathy affects relationships and found that men with primary psychopathic traits, like emotional coldness, had more trouble with attachment over time. Surprisingly, the women didn't show the same pattern. However, both men and women with secondary traits, like antisocial behavior, found it hard to form deeper bonds as their relationships progressed. All in all, the results were sobering. Relationships with psychopaths often descend into chaos and dysfunction, leaving their partners emotionally drained or facing devastating breakups. 19. Heroes and psychopaths. In today's world, it's easy to look up to those who inspire us with their bravery, but we might have to reconsider who we admire. For instance, in 2005, a businessman saved 20 people from the Indian Ocean tsunami. You'd expect him to be hailed as a hero, right? Well, this particular man was met with handcuffs upon his return home. Despite his bravery, he was a criminal in his own country. Researchers have long been intrigued by this connection and set out to explore any links between psychopathy and heroism, and the results from the 2013 study were intriguing to say the least. They discovered that people with subtle psychopathic traits were more likely to engage in heroic behavior, proving that the line between heroism and psychopathy can be surprisingly thin. 18. Even helpful psychopaths are scary. In 2017, researchers tackled a scary question. Just how willing would people be to sacrifice one life if it could save others? Scientists recruited 40 volunteers and then set up incredibly realistic VR systems. The test subjects were faced with two dilemmas. In the first, they had to kill a team member to prevent their torture by enemies. In the second, they had to push one person in front of an out-of-control train to save 5 others. The findings were troubling. The participants in the group with high psychopathic traits had no qualms about making the right choice, but did so with terrifying intensity. When they performed a mercy killing to save their team member from torture, they got overzealous with the stabbing, and they used up to 3 times more force when it came to pushing someone in front of an oncoming train. 17. The neglected female psychopaths. When you hear the word psychopath, you probably immediately think of a man, and research kind of backs this idea. But don't be fooled. Female psychopaths might be more common than we think. They're just better at staying hidden. A 2013 Harvard study found that women with psychopathic traits are just as dangerous as men. They just use much more subtler tactics. For example, instead of physical violence, they're skilled at manipulation and deceit, often presenting themselves as charming or vulnerable. So, while research on female psychopaths is still limited, watch out for things like jealousy, deceit, and controlling behavior, the most common characteristics that have been found to emerge during their teenage years. Could name a few. 16. Psychopaths are incredibly charming. Psychopaths can be incredibly charming, a fact illustrated by the sheer amount of love letters Ted Bundy received. People with psychopathic tendencies often have a keen understanding of human emotions, but instead of empathizing with others, they use this insight to better lure and manipulate their victims to further their own agendas. Take Bundy, for example. In interviews, he came across as friendly and memorable. In fact, some described him as very personable. But that charm becomes terrifying when you remember that he killed over 70 women. The fact that he could appear so friendly and normal while he had so much darkness in him makes him, and those like him, disturbingly memorable. 15. You've probably already walked past one today. You probably don't have to worry about ending up dead in a motel shower, yet. But there's a very good chance that you've already crossed paths with a real-life psychopath today. They're much closer than you think. For instance, the Hillside Stranglers like to pose as police officers. Ultimately, the sad truth is that psychopaths blend into society so seamlessly that even experts struggle to spot them. And since the most reliable tests for psychopathy are done behind bars or involve lengthy questionnaires scored by professionals, it's set to stay that way. Still, depending on who you ask, 1 in every 100 people could be a psychopath. So, next time you think someone's a bit off, you might be onto something. 14. Governments love them. Governments have a special affinity for people with psychopathic traits, especially when it comes to positions that come with a lot of tough decisions. Take the military, for example. Soldiers who can detach emotionally from the horrors of combat and focus solely on the mission are incredibly valuable. U.S. Army Major David S. Pearson underscored this in an article where he talked about the value of natural killers in warfare, people who feel little or no remorse about their actions. It might be unnerving, but the very traits that make psychopaths so dangerous in everyday life can likewise make them highly valued in certain high-stakes positions. 13. They are master gaslighters. Gaslighting is a covert form of emotional abuse, where someone manipulates your reality to control and dominate you. If you're dealing with a gaslighter, they'll twist events and facts to make you doubt your own memories and feelings. For example, they might deny pushing you during an argument, claiming that you fell and they were just helping. Psychopaths in particular are experts at this manipulation. Over time, this kind of manipulation can erode your confidence and make you feel completely dependent on them. It can have devastating consequences, including anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thoughts. 12. Psychopaths don't experience fear like you do. Psychopaths experience fear differently than most people. Their brains are wired to be less responsive to fear-inducing stimuli due to a smaller, less active amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing fear and other emotions. The profound disconnect from the human experience of fear means that most psychopaths might dive headfirst into dangerous situations without a second thought. When it comes to serial killers, however, this fearlessness is especially terrifying. It allows them to commit horrifying acts of violence without the usual concerns about consequences, like getting caught or going to prison. 11. The corporate psychopaths. If you've ever been stuck in a corporate environment, you won't be surprised to learn that psychopaths love it in the corporate world. In fact, up to 12% of CEOs exhibit psychopathic traits. This scary overrepresentation is partly because their shortage of empathy allows them to make ruthless decisions without the usual moral qualms. Unfortunately for the employees stuck working with them, psychopaths in leadership roles usually end up providing toxic work environments. Their drive for power and success, combined with their disregard for others' well-being, almost always leads to a culture of exploitation and dishonesty. 10. Psychopaths and Deception. When a serial killer gets caught, the media is always full of neighbors saying, "I had no idea," or "He was so quiet." But here's the thing. Psychopaths are incredibly skilled at faking normal emotions. And to make things worse, their fake emotions are often more believable than our real ones. In 2015, Brock University did several experiments to study how psychopaths mimic emotions. In one of them, participants were shown a picture of a frightened face and asked to mimic that expression. The participants with higher psychopathy scores got the highest ratings when scored on their sincerity. In another experiment, prison inmates had to recount something they did for which they felt no remorse while pretending to feel remorse. And again, without any actual regret, those with the highest psychopathy traits came across as the most sincere. The findings were consistent. Every single time, the people with high psychopathy scores mimicked emotions better than everyone else. 9. Psychopaths and Narcissism. Psychopaths are narcissistic, but not all narcissists are psychopaths. The key difference between the two lies in ego, or in the case of a psychopath, the lack thereof. Narcissists are deeply insecure, with fragile egos that constantly need validation. They rely on others for narcissistic supply, meaning they're heavily invested in what you think of them. Psychopaths, on the other hand, don't care what you think of them, as long as they achieve their goals. This makes them more cunning and manipulative. Psychopaths will be whoever they need to be to get what they want. They're not looking for admiration. They're looking for control. They plot and scheme far in advance, making them much more dangerous when it comes to executing their plans or exacting revenge. 8. Most psychopaths have a grandiose sense of self-worth. Psychopaths often see themselves as not just normal, but superior to everyone else, which is pretty unsettling. This overblown self-image means they have almost no reason to ever change their behavior. Take a psychopathic manager, for instance. They might think they're just being strong or assertive when they tear into their employees, completely ignoring, or not caring about, the fear and toxic environment they're creating. Because they can't, or won't, see their own flaws, they keep on with their destructive actions, leaving a mess wherever they go. 7. Psychopaths are pathological liars. Psychopaths can fabricate entire personas, making it almost impossible for others to catch their true intentions. While pathological lying isn't exclusive to psychopaths, it is a key behavior in people with the condition. Most pathological liars engage in relatively harmless, ego-driven lies, but psychopaths? lie with far more dangerous motives. Their deception isn't just about inflating their self-image. It's about manipulation, control, and often about causing real harm. 6. Psychopaths can be incredibly persistent. Psychopaths are known for their unnerving persistence. I mean, for a few seconds, just imagine a psychopathic stalker whose obsession with a victim drives them to pursue their intent. And then remember that these people don't feel fear. No matter how many times they're confronted or warned by law enforcement, their single-minded pursuit turns them into a terrifying force that's nearly impossible to stop. Their sheer tenacity can make them a nightmare for anyone caught in their path. They're psychopath. 5. Most internet trolls are psychopaths. In a recent survey by psychologists from Canadian universities, web users answered questions like, how much time do you spend online? And do you comment on YouTube? They were also asked about their online behavior with queries like, do you enjoy trolling people in forums? Or have you ever sent someone to shock websites just for fun? The results pointed to a disturbing reality. The survey revealed that internet trolls often embody what psychologists call the dark tetrad, a mix of 4 unpleasant traits: sadism, Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. In short, these people thrive on hurting others, are deceitful, and show no remorse for their actions. 4. They have recognizable speech patterns. Psychopaths might believe they are superior to everyone else, but researchers from Cornell University found that they often trip up when they talk. Jeffrey Hancock and his team interviewed 52 murderers, including 14 who were psychopaths, asking them to discuss their crimes. They then used a computer program to analyze their language. They discovered that psychopaths tended to describe their actions in the past tense more often, reflecting their detachments from the crimes. They also peppered their speech with filler words like and trying to sound more normal but actually giving themselves away. Their sentences were full of cause and effect statements and subordinating conjunctions like because and so that. Most tellingly, while other prisoners talked about family and faith, psychopaths focused on basic needs like food, drink, and money. 3. The ultra-realistic psychopath character. Have you ever seen the 2009 film The Lovely Bones? It followed the haunting fictional story of 14-year-old Susie Salmon, who was murdered by the serial killer George Harvey, played by Stanley Tucci. According to psychologists, George Harvey is a textbook example of a psychopathic serial killer. He's a seemingly ordinary man who indulges in disturbing hobbies, like obsessing over dollhouses, while hiding a horrific secret in an underground lair where he lures young girls to their deaths. To authentically portray his character, Tucci spent 2 days role-playing with the FBI, immersing himself in an FBI agent/serial killer scenario. The effort paid off. Tucci's portrayal was so realistic that he earned an Academy Award nomination for his portrayal of the psychopath, who was disturbingly more human than monster. 2. Psychopaths have a higher pain tolerance. Have you ever wondered why the killers in horror movies are never affected by a kick to the shin or a shot in the face? Research has shown a striking link between psychopathy and pain tolerance. In early experiments run by Dr. Robert Hare, psychopathic inmates were exposed to electric shocks to gauge how they responded to pain, and his findings were alarming. Psychopaths had an unusually high pain tolerance. They weren't conditioned by the fear of pain, felt less overall discomfort, and were even willing to endure more pain if there were incentives involved. 1. There's a little bit of psychopath in all of us. When we think of psychopaths, it's easy to imagine cold, emotionless people who, in all likelihood, tortured animals in their youth. But I got news for you. There's a bit of a psychopath in all of us. Psychopathy isn't an all-or-nothing condition. It's a spectrum, and we all fall somewhere along it. Just think about those times when you might have shown a lack of guilt or empathy, or when you used charm to get ahead, like during that last job interview. Those are all psychopathic traits. Ever been fearless in the face of danger or taken a significant risk? That too is linked to psychopathy. As it turns out, these traits, often viewed as an extreme, exist in varying degrees within everyone. The key difference is not the presence of these traits, but their intensity and how they're managed. And that's a wrap. If today's insights intrigued you, don't miss our earlier video on 25 kids who went to prison for insane reasons, where we explored the nature versus nurture debate and question what drives young people to commit such shocking crimes before they're even old enough to drive. If you want to find out how extreme behavior manifests in the youth, simply click on this link right here. And I'll catch you next time.